Hello, my name is Jim Turk, and I'm the director of the Center for Free Expression at Ryerson University. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I am speaking to you today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. On behalf of the Center for Free Expression, I want to welcome you and extend that welcome on behalf of the co-sponsors of today's event, the Ryerson School of Performance, the Thunder Bay Public Library, the Toronto Public Library, and the Vancouver Public Library. This is the third in the Center for Free Expression's In Conversation series, featuring prominent guests discussing issues of importance in the current political moment, in which democracy is under threat, public discourse on vital matters is fragmented into self-affirming ideological bubbles when not discouraged altogether, and censorship is increasingly seen as an ally rather than an impediment to social justice. Our conversation today is with one of the most remarkable and respected people in the Canadian theatre world, Philip Akin. Philip is an award-winning actor and director. It would actually take me well into the allotted time for today's conversation just to list the many honors and awards that Philip has received. Philip is also a founding member, and for 14 years until his recent retirement, the artistic director of the Obsidian Theatre Company, a theater company dedicated to the exploration, development, and production of the Black voice. Philip has not only won many awards for his remarkable work, he now has an award named after him, the newly created Philip Akin Black Shoulders Legacy Award, an annual award which will give five Black artists, performing and non-performing, $5,000 each to pursue their craft, in addition to training and other opportunities. Over the past decade alone, Philip has directed more than a dozen plays at Obsidian, as well as plays the Shaw Festival, the National Theatre School, Blythe Festival, Harold Green Jewish Theatre, Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre, Fountain School of Performing Arts, and Young People's Theatre, amongst others. Born in Jamaica, in Kingston actually, Philip moved to Oshawa when he was 4. He got involved in theater in high school because, in his words, or at least his words as quoted in the Toronto Star, if everyone liked you in theater, they wouldn't kill you. And we were the only Black family in Oshawa, so theater was a real lifesaver for me. He studied acting at the then Ryerson Theatre School, now the Ryerson School of Performance, where he played his first Othello, and in 1975 became Ryerson's first Black graduate in acting. Welcome, Philip. The title for today's discussion is Anti-Black Racism in the Theatre. We are delighted that Philip will be in conversation with Luke Reece, himself an award-winning producer, playwright, poet, and educator, who first met Philip when Philip visited Luke's York University undergraduate theater class. Welcome, Luke. In terms of today's program, after about 45 to 50 minutes of conversation with Philip and Luke, Luke will turn to the audience to bring the audience into the discussion. As you listen to their conversation, if you have a question at any point that you would like addressed when we turn to the audience, please click on the Q&A tab that you'll see at the bottom of center of your screen. Write down your question anytime as you think of it, and then we'll get to it when we turn to the audience. Now it's time to hear from our guests. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you to Ryerson for having us.
Thank you, Jim, and to all of the co-sponsors, all these libraries from across the country. How cool is that?
Yeah.
For a guy who lived in libraries, I think it's really cool.
And you don't still live in a library today?
I don't know. I don't think they let me in anymore. It's like, it's COVID days.
Yeah. And 94 people are watching. Wow, it feels like a lot for Zooms these days. I feel like the Zoom fatigue that we were feeling in the summer was actually just the ability to go outside. And now that it's cold and we're in another wave, everyone's like, yeah, I'll Zoom. I'll tune into a Zoom panel. Sure. So I have like so much to talk about. We might not get to it all. And then maybe we'll do this again sometime, Philip. I'm sure we'll talk another time. But I wanted to start this conversation the way that you like to start your rehearsal rooms, which is by talking about the language. You always talk about how the language shapes the universe. And if we understand the language, we'll better understand the world and what we're actually trying to say and communicate to each other. And since the title of this is anti-Black racism, or at least that's the topic we're diving into.
Luke, are you there? I
in
think
conversations right now that have, oh no, did
You're
I
back,
phrase?
so go ahead. You're back.
Okay, well, okay. This is the internet. This is the time. At what point did I freeze?
Talk in the room, words shape our universe, and freeze.
Great. So I wanted to start talking about the phrase anti-Black racism and what that actually means to you. And to also ask, what other words or phrases do you think are being tossed around right now with many interpretations that may also be leading to misunderstandings?
Well, that's a marginally big topic. You know, during the Cold War, the Americans devised backpack nuclear devices. And they had guys trained in, and they are hanging out in Eastern Europe. And so if it came to the big one, these guys would like find their way into various cities in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union and leave their backpack nuke somewhere and then blow them up. I think throwing the word racist around is like those black backpack nukes. It's easy, it's quick, it's a great way to make yourself be on the side of the self-righteous and to shut down all conversation. So I don't think I have very rarely chosen to use the word racist. When I graduated from Ryerson in 1975, there was, this was after, you know, the first flush of government funding to make Canadian theater. So the cohort that graduated with me, or people who all entered the industry with, those of those who are still around, you know, are kind of like the old guard now. And a lot of them are the A-listers. Not me so much, but they are. I would never have said that they were racist. But at the time, in the 70s and even into the 80s and stuff, race was not part of the oxygen in which was breathed. I mean, it was for Black people, and if you were Chinese or, you know, or whatever, or indigenous, yeah, you know, that air has never changed. But I think for particularly white theater artists, theater was reflecting the culture. And so systemic racism is, I think in those days, it was mostly, while racist, was also systemic indifference.
Do you remember when people started like calling theater artists racist? Like, was there just kind of a line when all of a sudden it was like, oh, now it's racism?
I think it was like 3 years ago.
Right, it's fairly recent.
Yeah, because, you know, come on. Because, you know, we're now into the same mindset where we go, I say, if everything's racist, then what's racist, right? Not all of it is racist. Not all of it is a nuke. Sometimes the person's just a jerk, right? Sometimes what you need is a lot less polite turn the other cheek and a good right hook. You know, I've said this a number of times. I'm not looking to change anybody's mind. I just want to stop their ability to speak crap and do crap. That's all. You can be whatever you want to be inside your head, but just don't say it and just don't impact other people. So we look at the stories that came out in the, in the 70s and the 80s, and they were, quote, Canadian stories, but they did not encompass artists of color. I mean, we now use the word woke is used a lot.
Yeah.
I won't even get into the grammatical challenges of using past tense for present. I blame the Matrix for a lot of that. And then I always want to ask the question, awakened from what? What are people woke from?
Mm-hmm.
And so you look back to the history of Canadian theater, and yeah, there was a milieu which existed, and it didn't really encompass other people. I know that when Richard Rose directed Coming Through Slaughter in 1989, I think it was the same year the Rez Sisters was really popular. And that was like, holy moly, there's these like 2 shows that aren't white Canadiana being displayed. And it was a big deal. But it wasn't a deal that had legs. It wasn't something that kept going on and on. And so the areas where I see things like racism in the theater is a lot of it's unconscious racism. So I'm going to just go down history lane here.
All right, here we
All
go.
right. Shakespeare wrote Othello in 1603.
Mm-hmm.
Ira Aldridge, black actor in England, went on for 3 performances before the critics and everybody, forced him off the stage because how could a black man be mauling this white woman? And that would be in 1825. And so you jump forward 105 years later until Paul Robeson did it in 1930. And the best of my knowledge, the last time Othello was played by a white person in probably blackface was in 1987 at the the Stratford Festival. Sorry, Shaw, no harm. On the Stratford.
We're good, Shaw,
Stratford,
don't worry.
Yeah. So basically, it's been since 1987 that Othello has been a quintessentially black part and a black play. And
you played it at Ryerson before it was then also played by a white person at Stratford. And then you got to play it again. Like, so in between you playing Othello, there was still a white guy who played Othello.
Oh yeah, no. I made a fool of myself one day after doing the CBC shoot, and it was a really cold day, and I was getting a ride in a car with a bunch of other actors, and Alan Scarf was driving the car, and I went on one of my then young rants about Stratford doing Othello, and Alan turned around and looked at me and said, "You do know I'm playing Othello, right?" And I was like slam shut down. But even then I'm kind of going, good actor, nice guy, but why is this white guy playing Othello?
Did you say anything to him in that moment, or was it just kind of like,
excuse me, when you get shot down, you go down in flames. There's no time for I know
it was a different Philip. It was a different time.
It was just I was like, was at 87, I've been at 37. I mean, anyway, so that was for Joe. So yeah, it was still in my early years as in theater, Othello was still a play that was a white person's part, right? Othello was a white part. So out of all the years, we now think of Othello as this black play. And yet in all the years since it's been written, it's only been a black part for 7.9% of the time. And even today when it is done. And, you know, Othello's only produced by white theaters. It's not produced by black theaters for many reasons.
I wonder
But
why.
yeah, I don't know. But what they do though is, how many times have you seen an Othello poster and the brother is naked to the waist? And they get this Mandingo stud muffin, this guy, this black hunk, and a beautiful blonde and blue to be Desdemona. And you kind of go, have you not figured out yet that that is indeed threads of racism that come down right from the point of view of a blonde and blue is the epitome of female beauty? Is somebody who will be despoiled by being with a black man, and that you're doing this play as a black man that says, no matter how civilized you are, if you are driven hard enough, you return into a murdering barbarian. I think those are pretty strong systemic threads.
Yeah.
It's a tough play to do, and yet at the same time, it's kind of put out there as the pinnacle play for a Black person to do.
Since we're going down history lane, in another conversation that we had, you started talking to this a bit. You said how what happened in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s was very different than what people think happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I mean,
just like a cool 30 years of your life.
Yeah, it was just such a very different time, right? I mean, I know that people nowadays look back and they kind of like, you know, have issues and you know what, everybody was on a different program back then. The white actors that I grew up with, it was all cool, but they weren't out there making some kind of systemic change. And the thing is the people today who believe in certain ways of justice in theater and in life, if they had been alive back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they wouldn't have been any different from anybody else. Right? It was just the way it was. I find it remarkable. I think I'm classmates, I don't know, some program anyway. Every once in a while I get emails from people I went to high school with, and they're all like, oh man, we never knew. And you kind of go, well, it wasn't important. It wasn't a thing. And so theater formed this bizarre little niche, whereas Jim said earlier, I felt like if I could do theater, if I could be somehow non-threatening human being, then I would be safer. And I think that lasts till today. You know, when is the moment that a young little black boy stops being cute and becomes a threat? Like, when's that happen? It always happened, right? And so you end up with these kind of tropes. You end up with, you know, you end up with some big black actors now, big men, you know, I could name a few, right? And they're always cast in that kind of threatening kind of posture, right?
But why? I wonder why theater though? Like, I get, okay, we need to find a way to be non-threatening. Is a part of it the fact that in theater we get to play these other parts and we get to show them like this, but then we're cast as the parts that are often threatening. So I just, why theater, and why not like, I'm gonna be a mailman, or I'm gonna go be a teacher? Like there are other, I guess maybe more like friendly. I don't know why postman was the one that I thought of as like a thing. It's just like your neighborhood postman. But like there are other non-threatening positions. I feel like you could go in any direction. So what was there, like a moment where theater was introduced to you and you saw it doing that work? Like, did you see a non-threatening black man on a stage and thought, he's found something and I want to try to access that?
I didn't find that. I just here, let me put this up there. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's me in high school playing a classic play, Romanoff and Juliet. Is there anybody more non-threatening than that guy, that black guy wearing a Russian Cossack outfit? Ain't nobody know. I was not threatening, bro, until I grew a big afro, and that was after high school, and then all of a sudden I was a problem.
Do you remember recognizing that fact at the time, that it was the non-threatening, or was it something that you discovered afterwards and reflecting upon it?
I don't know. I mean, I like to say everything I learned about being black in this society, I learned before I was 8 years old. So,
Right.
you know, you understand survival. You understand the whole turn the other cheek philosophy. You understand be nice, don't speak up. You know, you understand. You're taught all of that, right? But that doesn't work, right? It doesn't actually advance us anywhere. It's been the biggest lie promulgated, you know, is the philosophy of turn the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe one has to stand up and fight and be not apologize for anything to really survive in this world. And I believe that works in theater, and that is a contentious place still today to be in theater, because you go and you work with other theater companies and you produce with other theater companies, and most of the time the attitude, spoken or unspoken, is that they think they're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
They think that we're a supplicant. We should just be happy, Lord have mercy, to be in your sacred white space. And it's bullshit. Because right now it's gotten very popular to do non-white work. And nobody ever asks the cost of what it is to be a black artist doing a black show, where you are expected to open up your heart in front of white audiences in a white theater. Nobody talks about that these people don't actually have the wherewithal to be doing these parts. You know as well as I do, Luke, the phone call we got from somebody doing a black play for opening night saying, yo, there's no black people coming to our opening night. Can you and Obsidian get a whole bunch of black people to show up? Right? That's what it is.
But
That's
I was
theater.
never surprised. Like,
No.
you know, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, this makes sense. You're playing into a lot of the questions that I have here, which is great. Thank you, Philip. I didn't send you these in advance, but you already know you're a great scene partner, I have to say. So my first experience of that, of kind of being in a being used for this like white production of a kind of a black show, was, I think I've talked to you about this, when I was in the Wiz in grade 8. I played the Lion, and they I auditioned for the Tin Man. They cast me as the Lion because they wanted to use my afro as the main. And then the guy who auditioned for the Lion ended up getting cast as the Tin Man because he was like clean shaven, I guess, and he had that look. But I remember being in rehearsals, and it was a white director, and like all the white teachers were involved. And like, first of all, I didn't like, there was no discussion about like, hey, this is the black telling of the Wizard of Oz, or this is like a reimagining of that. I just thought it was a better version of the Wizard of Oz, and that all of my black friends happened to be cast. And like, I was like, oh, this is great. How come like Terry, Matt, like we're all here? I don't understand. And it wasn't until later, like looking back on it now, that I realized, oh, I wonder if there was like a bit of like opportunistic casting there, where it's like, hey, we have all of these like singing and dancing Negroes, we can finally do the Wiz. Like, and then, you know, I was what, how old are you in grade, like 12, 13 years old or something, and you can't really figure out, like, you don't see that kind of thing. And I just wonder, like, how do we teach the upcoming generations to discern between like what is a genuine opportunity and what is not? I mean, a little bit of that is just our own judgment and our own values. But I feel like we also can get to a point where we're saying no to opportunities and then missing out completely.
Well, I turned that around, and I mean, I had a call last week from somebody, you know, caught on the horns of this dilemma, and I just go and say, well, how much you willing to pay? Like, I mean, personally pay. Like, every art costs, good art costs a lot. So what are you willing to pay to go through these things, right? There is actually there care has to be given. You know, doing a lot of the plays that I've done where you're talking about real Black issues, Black artists going out there and opening up, you know, bleeding out for these performances. And we talk about that. We talk about the care that has to go in. We talk about what does this cost? And the problem is somebody who doesn't understand Black culture, Black people, or, you know, you're doing a play, a Black play in an all-white theater, have no idea of these costs. They have no idea of the toll that has to be paid.
Yeah, if you don't understand the value, you can't figure out what the cost is.
Right. And so you have to create a culture whereby you accept the cost and their ways of healing. And that's not just for Black artists. I mean, it's for, if you're doing a play when and it's, you know, and it's based, and there's race involved, and there's awful stuff being said in the play, and there's white artists and Black artists doing it, you've got to find a point of healing for everybody, because the white bro, he don't want to be saying that stuff. The Black bro don't want to be hearing it, but they got to go for it every night and come to a place of balance and care out of that. But if you don't set that up, if you perpetuate this bullshit, well, it's theater, you know, rah, 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 that's then you're doing what? You're doing museum theater.
Look, I feel like,
sorry, let me just mention.
Yeah.
Black culture, right now is somewhat popular, right? And I say somewhat because we're in this moment, this Black moment in time, and it should be really focused on Black issues, but it's not. There's a whole bunch of other issues have been sort of like gummed on to go for it. But Black culture has always been cherry picked by everybody else, right? And there is a pervasive sense through society and through theater that has basically a bunch of emotional carpetbaggers vampiring off of Black culture with impunity. And they just take this, take that, doesn't matter, right? And they do that because there is, I feel, totally unsubstantiated theory here, but I feel it's because of the resident strains from slavery, whereby people think that they can just take what they want from Black people and Black culture with impunity because they were once owned, and anything they got, we can take.
And we've never been able to take it back.
No. Well, no, you... Yeah, power don't let you take back. Power only gets resolved with more, with meeting power, right?
Yeah.
So in Canadian theater, the roots of all of that were created early, right? When the regional theater system was created by the Canada Council for the Arts, most of the regional theaters were run by white gay Brits, right? And they brought over a style of theater, and that was it. And it wasn't even like a gay positive theater, right? Which was like so bizarre when you look back at it. It was just kind of like this formulaic British theater and classic theater. And that was the world in which I graduated and went into theater and came out of theater school, right? I remember they used to do like 3 or 4 artistic directors from like out west would like do one set of auditions. And I remember 2 times I went in and it was the same 3 guys. And the first time I went and I said, "You're doing Equus? I want to play the lead horse." In the character description, it says, "He's a chestnut stallion." I said, "You're not going to find anybody more chestnut than me." It didn't work. It didn't work at all. And then I used to do an audition piece from a play called Ododo, and it's this great monologue, and it's about these plantation slave owners laughing at this little black kid who's been caught in the watermelon patch, like, you know, gorfing watermelon as fast as he could. And the punchline of it was that, you know, little Jimmy was starving to death, and that's why he was eating it. And that went over in the rehearsal hall so poorly. People got so angry as if I was making a personal attack against them, when all I was doing was speaking to the anger and the work that was important to Black people at the time. So nobody in Canada was going to do that play. How many, I mean, there's been a long history of Black writings in England and in America and in Africa, which are not done here, haven't been done here. I like to say, you know, when we did Intimate Apparel by Lynn Nottage, nobody even knew who Lynn Nottage was, right? So bringing those Black voices, I mean, was that not the genesis of Obsidian, right? We, you know, our first slogan was, you know, bringing the Black voice to the stage, because nobody was doing it.
You reminded me of a moment that I experienced, I think maybe 4 years ago. I was at some kind of a networking event, and like older white actor was like, "So what's one of your favorite like classic Canadian pieces?" And I said, Harlem Duet by Janet Sears. And they laughed at me. They're like, no, I mean like one of like the classics. And I was like, and I didn't respond to that, because in my head I was pissed. And at that stage I didn't feel as confident being like, "Hey, you, like, this is a classic to me. Like, this is a part of the canon that I'm following, the canon that I'm adding to." And it doesn't go that far back in terms of, and also what am I being taught? Like I read Harlem Duet not in university, in like when I was doing work with Dibby Young outside of university, when I was decided that I need to pursue some other learning and teaching outside, and Dibby Young was like, "I'll teach you some stuff." And I was like, "Cool, Dibby." And then we sat in on Janet Sears' class at U of T. She taught playwriting there, I think still does, and read Harlem Duet. And I was like, how come it took me like going from my school to like just an outside program, and then to like another university to finally find this piece that resonates to me in a way that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah. So you, I mean, you know, it's a little bit like trying to, I don't know, just pull apart this really complex silk banner, because to teach non-white theater means it's best if it's taught by people from those cultures. And it goes back, and so it's one thing to say, here's the end result, here's theater, here's a performance at a venued company, right? But to change that means you have to go back and change everything leading up to it. It's not just the theater, it's the way people are trained. It's the way, you know, listening to a Black actor graduate from a notable theater school say, and I said, "So can you do like, you know, a Black street accent? Can you do a Caribbean accent? And she looks at me and she says, no, but my Russian accent is really good. I'm like, yo, girl, you ain't gonna get cast as no Russian. That's not gonna happen, yo. But if you can't do a Jamaican accent, if you can't do a street accent, where are you gonna work? Right?
Yeah.
It's it's about all of that. It's not just one slice of the pie, it's the whole pie that has to be changed in a positive way. And the lip service that's going on right around now is frankly quite sickening, because everybody, I mean, I wish I was a playwright, because there is so much money being thrown at Black playwrights right now. It's absurd. However,
It's wild.
you kind of go, I'm sorry, where were you 3 minutes ago or last year? Like, where were you
before
in February?
May 25th.
Yeah, where were you in February of this year? And they were nowhere. Everybody's screaming for non-white designers and production managers and anything. Where were you in the creation and the development of those artists? And the fact of the matter is, the truth is, nobody was there other than a few of the non-white culturally specific theater companies. And you have to do that work, right? You have to build. Years ago, I used to say, just north of Toronto, right? There's some of the best farmland in the country. I mean, it's like the soil is rich. It's like gazillion feet deep, and you can grow anything there. And then if you ever go up past Sudbury, right, around Red Rock and the like, there's just shield and a little tiny ass bit of dirt, right? That's all there is there. And I used to say that what we had to do at places like Obsidian was make dirt. We didn't have the luxury of the gazillion feet of rich soil, of history, of the theaters, of the writers, of the money. We have to go to make dirt before we can plant anything, and it takes time to do. You were just over Sudbury, you know what
I know. That's why when we were saying that, I was like, yeah, no, I was there a couple weeks ago driving through. I know exactly what you're talking about. Speaking about soil, actually, no, let's go back to power quickly.
Oh, sure.
We're talking about power meeting power, the slice of the pie. And I feel like because like theater so relies on its public funding right now, it feels like the concentration of power in Canadian theater like is actually pretty focused, and it's in the money, it's in the funders. And there isn't new money. So in terms of us trying to find that power to meet the existing power, like there is none. How do we pry that power away? And like, is it really just up to the funders right now to just take a stance and say, hey, we're gonna try to level the playing field here?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a great utopian vision. You know, I would argue that I would argue that virtually all of the funders are really nice people, and I would argue that most of them don't know anything. They don't know anything about being Black or Asian or anything. They don't know, right? So you're asking people who don't know, who English may not even be their first language, to do what exactly, Luke? Like, you know, somehow make a great...
Empathize?
Okay. This isn't the food bank, yo. You know, so yes, but the money and the councils have always influenced what work gets done. The Canada Council started the regional theater system in this country, right? The Canada Council decided that Canadian stories were important. So in the 60s and 70s, monies went to create what we call the mid-sized theaters, you know,
Yep.
right? The money fell off the table for the Black theater companies at that time because those were not considered Canadian stories. So the councils have always had their thumb on the scale. The Canada Council has a policy right now that says if you're doing an Indigenous story, right, you have to consult with that community. I think that's a great policy. What I would like is that policy for Black people.
Yeah.
If you are parachuting in some poor Black actor into your play and ignoring the fact that they're Black, I think the least you could have done was done a little consultation and outreach and research to understand what being Black in that particular situation would be. I would love to see things like that. I would love to see there be an equality, because Black people in this country, along with several other, you know, non-white culturally specific groups, have been considered and treated like second-class citizens. And it's that way in theater as well, right? So you get the exotification, you get, oh, look at the virtue we're showing you right here. We're going to do, you know, and plop in. We're going to do the raisin in the oatmeal. You know, we're going to do all of that stuff. But is it really making a change? And I don't think so. I think the change comes from power. I think the change comes from putting artists and people in positions of power within structures. You don't understand a disabled person's point of view about climbing the stairs to get into a balcony if there isn't a person like that in the room to have those conversations. You need that. So why is it such a big stretch to think that if y'all thinking about doing a ton of Black plays or Black play development, I ask you, who and how many Black people are there in the company, existing in your company right now, who can make a welcome home for that Black artist coming in? And most times there's not. So you get, once again, it's not the actor this time, it's a Black playwright coming in and saying, well, and then Lord have mercy, the poor Black actor who has to try to explain Nine Night to a bunch of people. Like, come on, if y'all don't, how can you do this play and y'all don't even know?
Yeah, and we're at the point now where I feel like some people are starting to realize that, but we're getting the calls too late. Where all these initiatives, all these ideas, all these things companies want to do, they come up with it, they figure out the structure, the framework in their own silo, and then like the day before, they're like, hey, I guess we thought we should probably ask you what you think of that, and you know, just like you know, we have to actually get this approved. So if you could just, and there's again the lack of care that, you know, if you were actually trying to serve us, then we would be a part of it from the beginning.
That's right. And I think that's where power comes from, right? Like it's about not being given a freebie agency voice in the room. That does nothing. Owning a table, owning the room, right? That gives you power. So I know that, you know, I've, people don't necessarily agree with me on this, but I think it's a waste of time trying to change white theaters into
Here
being
it comes.
something they're
I was
not.
waiting. I was like, how long until?
You know, why? If artists of color put as much time and energy into supporting, developing, and creating their theater instead of trying to change white theaters, we all would be better off. There would already be more power accrued to the Black organizations. And it's simple. Ain't nobody can tell your story better than you.
Yeah. And I
in
think
the way that you want.
I think there was a sweet spot where that could have taken off, and I think it was foiled by all these white organizations just deciding to hire Black actors and do Black shows, because there was a time where, I mean, we look at a lot of the Black companies that exist now, or a lot of the culturally specific companies, and they existed because there was a time when nobody was producing their shit. So people were really game to step up, to get into administration, and to be like, we're going to be the ones to do it. And then, you know, we've become the hot thing, and all of those people who would have started their own companies or who would have contributed that company that maybe at one point actually really wanted to be an actor are kind of seeing that and are getting hired, and they're being taken away from even the chance to try that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was having a conversation with Tanisha yesterday talking about who are the new Black leaders, like kind of like in the generation under me. And I don't know if it's because it's COVID or if I've lost touch, but I don't know. And I thought about it some more, and I feel like they're all just getting hired as actors, and then they have a terrible experience at the white organization, and then they leave theater forever.
That's right. Then they go to film and television. There was I can't remember her name. I'm kicking myself now, but a Black theater creator in England who basically says she prefers to be excluded out of the theater scene, because if she's excluded, then she can make her own work, which is better than being this kind of faux.
Yeah. Was this Selena Thompson?
I don't think it was.
Salt? No. Okay.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Selena, but it was of the same kind of ilk, right? Like, anyway, it's a complicated argument, but I guess I go back to the idea that theater is inextricably woven into our society. Like it reflects our society. Pieces of it, and the pieces that have been constantly ignored are a little bit like a stone in your shoe, and you kind of go, oh, that hurts, and then you take your shoe off and you throw the stone away, and that will happen to, I look at I've done a bunch of plays by Joseph Jomo Pierre, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm amazed. Like, we did Born Ready, and he wrote it because as a response to Black young men killing themselves, right?
Yeah.
So the play has got 3 characters in it: 2 young black men and a woman who represents the gun. And not one single reviewer from a major paper or online venue figured out that Cara Ricketts represented the gun. In all their reviews, she was the girlfriend, even though the language, although it wasn't in, like English, the proper English, referred. And so a 13-year-old Black girl at a Scarborough Community Center goes, oh yeah, she's a gun. Like, she gets it like that. And these white reviewers would be like, no, it's the girl, and didn't have a clue. So we did a production where it was Born Ready and Push a Man. It was a two-hander, and one of the we got slagged in the reviews, and a bunch of them. And then one of the reviewers did an interview with Joe, and he said to Joe, Joe, I wasn't very kind to, in the review of your play. And Joe said, it doesn't matter, man. That play wasn't for you. Mm-hmm. Right? He said, do you have any Black friends? Do you know any Black people? He said, no, you don't. That play was not for you. So the fact that you didn't get it or understand it doesn't mean anything to me. And so the next play that we did, when we did Shakespeare's Nigga, it was like, everybody's like, we really want to see what Black people think about Black people in Shakespeare. And then after they saw the play, they said, oh, we didn't want to see that.
No.
They couldn't really mean that. And we did, right? Because they will ask you for your Black voice. They will vulture it, but then they don't want it. They don't.
That was the first
really
Obsidian production I saw.
Yeah. Shakespeare's
Yeah.
Nigger? Yeah, I was talking with Joe about it the other day. I said that's the one play that I would love to direct again.
Yeah,
You know?
and like no, I mean it's hard for any Canadian show, I feel like, from aside from a few playwrights, to get, second productions. But like you look at like a lot of the shows that Obsidian has premiered by Black Canadian playwrights, like where are those second productions? Where are even the conversations about those second productions?
Where
Like
where are
yeah.
the Black theater companies besides Obsidian and, why have you let Little Black Afro die on the vine, man?
I have a little poster right here behind my computer to always remind me where I started. I think it's because I cut my hair, but it's growing back.
I know.
It's coming back.
You and me, we should grow our afros together, man. I will look like a dandelion in August, but you'd look good.
Yeah, I have thought about it. I mean, more so just because of the situation we're in, but yeah, I think it could rock it. I have to talk to Katie though. I don't know if she's watching. So I'm gonna I see some questions in the Q&A, so I'm gonna switch over to questions from the audience quickly, but I just want to have I have a couple more things here, but I want to talk more about this idea of the Black artists really committing to the Black theater companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, because I had a question, and I think this answers it. My question was, what are the two competing ideas for how we get our voices on the stage? I was thinking back to, on my road trip, I listened to an audiobook of a Martin Luther King Jr. Biography, and then Malcolm X autobiography, and like really wanted to listen to like these, because they were, famously, like they respected each other, but we had nonviolence and we had violence. We had Black power and we had the peaceful marches. And even now, what we're seeing with the protests, we're kind of seeing this divide of how people are dealing with this. Like, how are the Black people actually choosing to engage with what's happening in the world? And I was curious as to what those two things are, or if they have been emerging for theater. And I think it might be this school of like, we're going to try to like get on all of these white stages versus we need to focus on our stage.
Yeah. I mean, everybody should do the career that they want to do and try to get that to happen. There have been people for which a company like Obsidian was huge and instrumental in supporting them over the years. There were people who just said, no, I'm not having anything to do with Obsidian. It's a ghetto for me, right? I'm going to ghettoize and I'm going to go and that's fine. Everybody can do their art. Right? I 100% support that. But where I come in on is about the big, other than your own personal career, the big picture in terms of changing the system into something else. If you're going to change the system, then you got to dance with the one that brung you, and you've got to build your power base. And that means anything you want it to mean, as big as you want. I sit down and I read lots of people who spend. Good God, man! I mean, like people be spending hours and hours and hours of their life railing on social media about changing a company, and I'd be like, you could have just spent all that time and built the company. You could have changed the process. Instead of expecting them to change, you could have changed it from your point of view. Why are there where are all the Black theater companies?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a part of the reason why I decided not to apply for Tarragon, is there was a point in looking at like how much work it was going to take to change that company, and to think, well, actually I could use that energy to do the work myself and find the space that's, I'm not going to blow it all on one organization that doesn't want to change, or that has an audience, a donor base that actually doesn't want to change.
So, it comes down to a very personal thing. But I think that if you're trying to change a system, then you need to get into the system and find better ways of changing it. Being an actor working for an independent artist working for a company does not make you a stakeholder. You're just jobbed in, man. You're just jobbed in. And you know what? If 2 weeks before rehearsal starts, or 2 days, as has happened to me, somebody says, "No, I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, can't do the play." You know what? It's an opportunity for somebody else, but there'll be somebody else there first day of rehearsal, a good actor there, ready to take on. So you can't, the receptionist at the TD is not the person you've got to convince. Right? Y'all want to get up to 54th floor and say, no, now we're in the room. This is where we work. That's where power comes.
I love that you're still loyal to TD, despite the fact that, they sponsor Obsidian. They don't sponsor you, Philip. It feels like, unless they do, unless you signed a deal. I don't know. Did you ink a bank deal?
Listen, I'm going to be knocking on their door for the Black Shoulders Legacy Award for sure.
The next time we do a call, you'll be wearing a TD green hoodie.
What, you don't like my Asada taught me?
No, I do. I thought, you had to show it everybody what it says. Asada taught me.
Asada taught me.
There
Asada,
we go.
Yeah. Everybody can figure out who Asada Shakur is now. So yes, you were going to go to
Ange, let's have one of the audience questions.
Okay, the first question is, how do we hold others accountable properly for actions in the past that we know are racist now, but just weren't part of the conversation for white people back then? I believe the lack of knowledge didn't make those things okay, but I think today we are so harsh to cancel artists without looking at the situation with a grain of salt. But how do we do that?
Well, I mean, you actually, you can't, right? You can't go back in time, right? And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. I mean, if when I was down at the Shaw Festival as an actor in 1975, Tony Van Bridge brought me in. They were doing Caesar and Cleopatra. I got a little linen diaper being the black guy, and change that. I don't know how you do that. How do you expect to make some sort of redress for those people? It's like, and then I turn around and I kind of go, because I had this asked to me once. They said, what did I think about, John A. McDonald's statue being pulled down? I said, look, are we still talking about dead white guys? Why? Why are we still talking about dead white guys? Like, do I think statues should be pulled down? Yeah, pull them all down. I mean, it's not going to pull down one black statue because it probably ain't none, right? So pull them all down. Right? You can't, we're not the God Janus. We're not looking backwards and forwards at the same time, right? So I understand that there are things that were done and said. And trust me, I could sit here right now and go chapter on verse on all sorts of people in this industry. And why don't I do it? Because A, I don't have the time, and B, I think it's pointless. It's not worth my life, the years I have left of my life, going after somebody who dead. So do I think that there are things that could be done in terms of honoring where we are now? Yes. How do we look to the future? For me, is a more interesting proposition. How do you turn around and if you don't like the way a theater is named or part of a theater is named, and somebody paid $1 million or $1.5 million to name it that, then I think it'd be a great idea to raise $1.5 million and change it.
I worry about how much time we spend in the past as well. It just in these moments of, because I think I would have the same answer. I don't think you can. actually do that. And you know, someone tells you who they are the first time, believe them, is a quote that I also know that you love. Do you have a shirt with that on it?
I don't. My next shirt that's coming in is never argue with people that Harriet wouldn't have brought.
Yeah. And then and Marcus Garvey said something like, when he was talking about going back to Africa, eventually returning, and how like there are some Black people who are no good here and they'll be no good there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next one, Ange, please and thank you.
All right. The next one, an attendee asks, can we talk about shadeism? As a biracial person in this industry, I don't feel included by the Black or the white companies. Do you believe there is a way to make spaces inclusive while also uplifting all Black companies? In my experience, being biracial is not Black enough for Black companies, i.e. Russian accent instead of Caribbean accent is a special skill, but considered as Black and asked to be tokenized for white companies. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's heinous what's been done in that regard. My mama used to say you have to eat a peck of dirt before you die. And a peck is 2.5 bushel baskets full of dirt. And that's, I hated it when she said it, and I hate it more that she was right. But that's the truth of it. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. There are some biracial artists who I've had the privilege and pleasure to engage with when I was at Obsidian, and from the stories they told, I changed the company logo to Black comes in all colors. I made it a policy at Obsidian to say, I'm not the race police. If you tell me you're Black, you're Black. I have done everything I can to help shape the opportunities that any and all Black artists could have. Conversely, I've sat in the office with really dark-skinned Black artists who tell me the same thing about how they are looked down upon and how they're, what's her name? The name's just escaped my, anyway, she wrote this essay, and the first line of the essay is, I have rape-colored skin. And it's about being light-skinned in America. And I know that's not what the person was asking, but I get it. It's appalling, it's contemptible, it is that thing where you always feel like, yeah, I got hired to be in the ensemble because I'm not so dark that I will stand out, and yet they can use me to tell everybody that they hired a Black person. It's awful. And that's precisely why I believe Black theater companies should be at the forefront of hiring people of all colors, regardless of the storyline, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but you know, my family is spread out all over the world, from the Arab Emirates to Jamaica to the States to Canada to Hong Kong. You get us all together, there is not a piece of that Black rainbow that isn't there. And we're all there together, and we're family, and we're all Black. And I think that has to be something that is pushed going forward. And you have to hold particularly the non-white culturally specific theater companies, their feet to the fire to make sure that they are there to support and sustain you.
And I can speak personally to say that like Philip has definitely upheld that as a biracial artist who found a home at Obsidian right away. And I think a part of that is, it was never questioned. When I had that first meeting with Philip, with Mel, hey, I could help that Mel was there too in terms of building that relationship with Obsidian. But I realized that when I walk through the world, people see me as Black. They that's how I'm treated. That's how the world sees me. So that's how I'm going to walk through the world. And it's tough. There are definitely days when I think it's other people in my life kind of bring up the whiteness. I don't bring it up as much actually. And that's like this whole thing that I got to deal with, but it's, you own it, whatever it is. And like Philip said, we're not the race police, and nobody should be for you. I remember being called an Oreo as a term of endearment as a kid, as like something that was like cute and funny, and was like how middle school kids flirted with each other. I guess this was around the whiz years as well, so that was a fun time in my life. But just take the time to understand how you feel in that skin and what that means. And also, in case anybody's wondering about the article Philip mentioned, it's a New York Times piece, and it's written by Caroline Randall Williams. So if you Google that line, it's the first thing that comes up. There aren't a whole lot of pieces out there with that line front and center. So definitely recommend the read. Philip sent me this article months ago. It came out June 26th. Yeah. We'll take another one, Ange, please and thank you.
Okay, the next one is from Dante. Luke and Philip, thank you for this time. Philip, I'm in my final year of study in an acting conservatory, and there are systemic issues that have been deeply affecting BIPOC students. At this point, I feel so hopeless. Every attempt at bringing light to these issues and insisting action seems to fail. You said earlier today that you don't seek to change people's opinions or biases. How do I combat issues of systemic racism in the institution I study at if all of the biases seem to be against me as a Black man?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've had this conversation so many times because the institutions are, they're a mess, yo. They're a mess, you know? And the fact of it is, there's very little that you can do when you are approaching it from a student perspective. Even though you're paying and going into freaking debt, you know, to get this crap on your plate every day, that ain't right. And a lot of times I've heard of people who go to their teachers, they go to their faculty, they go to their particular dean. And once again, that doesn't do anything because the system that's in place is working exactly the way they want it to work. They will look in your face and they will lie and they will tell you that they're trying to change it. But the truth of the matter is, if they wanted to change it, they would have changed it. But it's working exactly the way that they want it to work. And so you have to, I think, go beyond your own faculty, and you actually have to go to where the power is. You have to go up the ladder. You have to go to the president's office. You have to go to who the heck is sponsoring this? What company who's putting money into this program or into that university is going to be happy to hear Black people turn around and say, yo, man, we're in this situation and it's awful. And this is what I mean by power. It's about understanding where the levers are and going for that. And unfortunately, we always try to come up from the bottom, and it's not going to work. Because if an acting student who is standing up for themselves like they righteously should, I guarantee you most of the people in that department are like, that's okay, they'll be gone in 3 years. And then you leave, and then the next person tries to pick up. So I think you have to short circuit and you have to go above the grade that you are currently dealing with. Sorry for that, man. It's awful. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nothing to add to that. I think you hit it, Philip. We've been talking about power a lot today, and I think it is important to know, like, not just for schools, but for organizations, for those institutions you find yourself in. Know where the power is. Know where the power comes from. That's where you have to go. And if you think you've reached it, like, go to where the money is. If it's not working, go to the money. Money talks. We'll take the next one, Ange, please and thank you.
Okay, the next one is from Emma. Is there a Philip Akin, Luke Reece play reading list?
Look what's above my computer here.
Yeah. Man, you know, I have to say that one of the best perks about being artistic director of Obsidian Theatre was all those years I would just pick up the phone and phone some agent down in New York or LA and say, "Hi, my name's Philip Akin. I'm the artistic director of Obsidian Theatre Company. Can you send me a reading copy of?" And these plays would just come in. They're plays that I think, The House That Will Not Stand by Marcus Gardley, I think, is a really interesting piece. A lot of Marcus Gardley's work, I think, is interesting. Christina Anderson's stuff, Lynn Nottage, of course. I really like White Noise by Susan Laurie Parks. I think I'm the only person that I've met who's ever really liked it.
Did you ever send me the script to that one? Because I haven't read it yet.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Great, thank you.
And I think it's overwritten in some ways, but what it's saying is amazing. Obviously, Antoinette Wandu with Passover, I think, is a brilliant piece. There are a number of plays that come out of England that we don't get even the vaguest opportunity. I mean, Kwame Kwei Armah's Elmina's Kitchen is an interesting piece. There's a whole bunch, and it's weird because we relate a lot more to the American canon because somehow it's kind of more relatable in some ways, and the British canon has all that class and accent and understood culture around it that it makes it really hard to pull into a Canadian context. Luke, did you have some plays? You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, no, I knew it's because I was typing to see, because I read there's an adaptation of the Three Sisters, and I never I never liked the Three Sisters. I didn't. So when I was asked to read this play, I was like, oh, it's an adaptation of the Three Sisters, fine. But it's beautiful. It's a reboot. It's set in Nigeria, and it's written by Inua Ellams. Inuaellams. I don't know how. I don't think the script is, you can access it publicly right now. But whatever it does become available, definitely have a read. I'm going to big up Lisa Codrington, Up the Garden Path, a play that I'm waiting on a second production in Toronto, please. I enjoy humor, and I think that there's just so much life in that piece. And that was also, it holds a special place because I was a part of the first season I was with Obsidian, that and Venus's Daughter by Megan Swaby. The first Canadian play I ever read was Scorched, and I was in high school. I was in 12th grade. The first time I read a Canadian play when I was in grade 12, and my drama teacher said, "Hey, you should read Scorched." And just I guess discovering Canadian writing in that way, or discovering that there's a richness that we can find when it's out there is great. So I'd say do a deep dive.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying not to big up plays I helped develop, Luke.
Well, that's why I did it. That's why I did it.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, that I had wax of plays sent to me. I have a hard drive full of plays. And if y'all want to just reach out, I will forward them on to you. There's like there, what was that play that I hated so much? Claiborne Park, which was supposed to be, some sort of a take on Raisin in the Sun. And I know it's heresy, but Raisin in the Sun's not my favorite play by a long shot. And Clybourne Park was supposed to be some sort of response to it, which I thought was ridiculous because it was not. But there was a play called Etiquette of Vigilance that was written as a direct response, and it was the young boy in Raisin in the Sun. It's him like about 40 years later, like a mess and so messed up because of moving to a white neighborhood and how awful it was. It didn't go far. But there's a ton of interesting plays. I mean, I would love to have a conversation about Stickfly by Lydia Diamond, right? Because I'd read it every 3 years thinking it would have gotten really great in the meantime, and then it didn't. So, but I'd love to have a conversation with somebody about it.
Yeah, I read that play. It was one of the first plays I think I got from the Obsidian Library when I was in university, which is to give a shout out now to the Obsidian Library, which I guess you can't access in the same way, because we used to say just walk in and we've got all the books there. You can't do that anymore. But I would say if you're interested in that, some of them are digitally, and you could, I mean, here I am volunteering Maika, but you should give Obsidian an email and see if there's some pieces that they can send you. See what they've been reading recently. One of the things I miss about Obsidian is having access to all those plays.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? We got 15 minutes. We're good. We could take some more questions, Ange.
All right. Next one is, what advice would you give to young emerging Black artists for getting their foot in the door, more specifically on the production side?
On the production side? Wow. I mean, everybody calling for somebody Black to be in their backstage crew, that's for sure. So I think that's a real edge right there. I think one of the things in this particular time is that there is an appetite for getting artists of color in the door. And I think that if there are, first of all, you have to, what is it that you know? What is it that you don't know? And how can you get the knowledge that you need? Like, who's the person you have to connect with? Who can help you take the next step and the next step? And to do that, it means a really deep, clear understanding of where you are and where you want to get to, and then start the path about how to do that. So if there's somebody, if there's somebody out there that you think is like tops of pops and is like they're the person who can really help you, then you need to be able to go to them to ask if you can apprentice, whatever you can do, right? But it can't just be get the foot in the door so I can move boxes for the next 30 years of your life. You have to actually put together a plan. I will now also throw in a little big me up of the Philip Akin Black Shoulders Legacy Award, because that's exactly the kind of thing that the Legacy Award is there to finance. It's for somebody to turn around and say, I have a great opportunity to go work with so-and-so who can build thus and so, and I can learn, and I need some money to go there. And that's where you make the application so that you can do that. It's the best way. I mean, you be as good as you can be, but we all need to grow and keep learning. The day we stop learning is like, that's what I'm feeling the lack of right now, is like there's a whole bunch of stuff I still want to learn. It's really hard to learn everything off the computer. So
yeah,
I think to make a critical path, to make a plan about where you want to go, and then ask people to help. Sometimes you go to a theater company like Obsidian and say, this is what I want to do. Is there any way that you can help me? Right? And that's what companies like that are there for.
Yeah, the best way to help us help you is, like Philip said, is to know what you want to do and to know what that path is. There was a student coming out of school in production who Richard Lee was teaching there and had said, hey, can you talk to the student? I was like, great. We had a Zoom. They told me exactly what they wanted to do or what things they're interested in. And I was like, cool, I'm working on a project right now. You're on it. Right. I was, because I didn't have to ask, well, what do you want to, like, is this something, right? He was very clear in what he was looking at learning. And I had an opportunity ready to go. That doesn't always happen. Let me not say that. But if we know what you want to do, we can help get you there. So I'm offering myself as one of those people that can help and make those connections. All right, Ange.
Okay, the next question is from Alexia. Do you believe Obsidian would benefit from having its own performance center to engage with the Black community and create an authentic space for performance?
I surely do. And I surely think that all that it would take to make that happen would be about $20 to $30 million. And that's a big piece of cabbage right there. I mean, you know, for years we thought about it and got involved with partnerships and trying to make it work. It is a lot of money, and you, apart from the money and all of that kind of stuff, where I'd like to do some thinking is about how does it fundamentally change the company? What are the sacrifices that the company who's been there to produce what do you have to give up to make sure that the AC works, or the roof doesn't leak, or there's a noise issue, or, you know, and those are real things, because what happens is sometimes people get shoehorned into a space, but they don't have a commensurate increase in operating revenues. And therefore, everything they do now is about survival. So it's a big question. So on the macro, yeah, I think it would be outstanding. On the road to get there, somebody has to have some really, really deep pockets, and not just to get the place up and running, but to substantially increase the operating funding going forward, because your expenses are going to climb through the roof. So the head says one thing, the heart says another.
We'll take the next one, Ange.
Okay, next one is Camila, and they ask, what are your thoughts on theater artists earning a living wage? When does it happen? How could it happen more often? Should it? Specifically interested in racialized theater artists achieving this.
Yeah, I mean, obvious. I mean, we live in an ecosystem where, if you're lucky to work in the A+ house theater, then yeah, you can make a living. And if you don't, you don't. I mean, the system, I think, is hugely flawed. For X number of years now, theater schools have been inculcating their students into thinking that they need to create their own work, and not actually how that's supposed to happen financially. I mean, when I ran into an actor when I said, so how's it going? He says, yeah, money's a little tight. I said, why is it so tight? He says, I'm paying off my credit card for the Fringe show I did last year. This is not a way to survive. I mean, I think it would be great when I heard that, you know, people saying that getting the CERB was the first time that they'd been financially secure in their entire acting career. I mean, you have to change a big part of Canadian society to make that work. And I think it should be changed. I think artists should have that living wage. But we're caught, right? Right now, you can have all the complaints you want against the big A houses. You can rage and whatever. But if you that's where you can make a living, right? I mean, otherwise you're doing collectives on a Starbucks card, and that's your pay, and in the hopes that you are investing in something happening down the road. The only reason that you know, financially, that I had success was that a lot of American movies came into town and there were hardly any Black actors, and so I got a good grounding in that. But here's the truth of it, right? Right around the time that Obsidian was formed, about, you know, when I was in my mid 50s or so, all of a sudden everybody, all the casting people went, oh, he's too old to play leads, he's not old enough to be Old Black Joe, and my income dropped by about 80%. So boom, right? And frankly, the amount of money that I would get from Obsidian was, I was able to still supplement as an actor. But these last years have not been easy, because it's not been a hell of a lot of money, right? So you go through these stages. Now I'm getting the Old Black Joe auditions. Man, they make me happy, right? I get to, anyway, sit in a rocking chair and it's all great. But you know, you do what you have to do to survive. And all I can say when it comes to this is that your art is the most important thing. And it's not, we don't all get the careers we deserve. In fact, most people in this business feel like they didn't get their just deserves. Mm-hmm. And so what you're left with is artistic ability. And then you have to say, how can that manifest itself? Because it may not manifest itself in being an actor at a regional theater. And you have to find a way to let your art grow and live and survive and keep you whole as a person while you do whatever you have to do to make sure that your family is fed and that your kids get the braces when they need them.
Yeah, that's what Obsidian was for me. As like, I didn't come into theater thinking, oh, I was gonna be an administrator. I thought I was gonna be a writer and I was gonna be a performer. And then there came a point of realizing I gotta pay my bills. If I'm gonna move out from Mississauga to Toronto, then I need to get a job that pays. So you also need to understand what your values are, and what, I guess we're going back to cost again, right? What is the cost? What is the cost of you working that extra job? And is it worth you being able to feel comfortable at home, to live in the place that you want to do, what you want to live in, and to have that extra confidence in your work as well and your worth. So if you go into a negotiation with a contract, if you're in that stage, right, you need to, like, there is a negotiation. You need to know what your worth is. And if you feel like a company is not offering you enough, you need to decide when it actually is detrimental for you to take that opportunity. Whether you do need to be looking at the Stratfords and the Shaws, even though you have this idea of what that institution is, if you really want that life, if you really want to be able to like work and live as an artist, then maybe you do have to at least try it, right? So you have to weigh that out for yourself. And I think for everybody it's different with those different values and how it balances out. We're just about at time, so I did want to take some more time to talk about BSLA. It's been mentioned, it was mentioned off the top with Jim, and Philip talked a little bit about it, but we are still looking for donations. So I will talk about that. This the Black Shoulders Philip Akin Legacy Award, which was started, I guess in the summer, a couple months ago now. And really, as Philip said, it exists to give Black artists, Black theater artists, that extra boost to learn, to train, to get the experience they need, to then maybe have these careers where they're able to work and live as an artist and get the experience that whenever we're applying for these positions, apparently we need to have. How do we have the experience if we never get a shot at actually working for the organization in the first place? Somebody has to give us that first chance. And Obsidian was always great at giving that first chance. Philip was always great at radically signing checks for people before he knew what their last names were, like calling up people to be like, what's your last name? I'm writing you a check for thousands of dollars. And this award, obviously you have to apply. There's a process to that, and we haven't put out the first call for submissions. But the idea is that the money we're raising right now sits in an endowment fund with the Ontario Arts Foundation so that it can go on and live in perpetuity, and that each year $25,000 divided by 5, the $5,000 to these Black artists in different disciplines will go out and will continue to support that next growth. So if you are watching this and you are in a position to donate, if you go to bsla.ca, which has a nice ring to it, you can actually go in and see information about the award, some more information about Philip, about Obsidian Theatre, and you can go to the OAF website and donate. And we would appreciate the support as we continue to reach our goal. We're going for over $600,000. And I think we're just under $300,000. So almost halfway there, which is really exciting for us. So if you've enjoyed the conversation, if you're able, if you know somebody who's able, if you know somebody who has that $20-30 million, feel free to donate, it's all good. And I also just wanted to take a moment to thank Ange, Jim, Ryerson University for putting this on, and also the other Luke Nader, who is helping us run tech for this entire webinar. If there are other questions, I mean, you can tweet stuff at me. Maybe I'll look at them. I don't know. Philip and I talk all the time. If you have a question for Philip, tweet it at me, and then I'll ask him one day when I'm calling him, or if I'm taking my scooter to do a 6 feet apart visit. Although it's cold now, so I don't know. It's supposed to be nice this weekend. Though. It's November in Toronto. So you can tweet at me at LAReece93 your questions, and then I'll just ask Philip and I'll tweet the answer back at you. That's what I've decided I'm going to do now.
I just want to thank everybody for showing up. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be able to have a forum to be able to talk. Thank you.
And we'll call back Jim. There he is.
Well, thank you both. The privilege was ours. I mean, Luke, what a wonderful conversationalist you were with Philip, and Philip, what a remarkable, truly remarkable contribution you've been to the theater world in Canada, and for your sharing your thoughts and comments with us today. I'd like to remind everyone that the next event in our CFE and Conversation series will be titled Anti-Black Racism and Inequality, What is to be Done? It's with Adolph Reed Jr., who's an eminent African-American public intellectual, professor emeritus of political science at the University of Pennsylvania, specializing in inequality, race, and racism, and a contributing editor to the New Republic and frequent contributor to many other publications, including Village Voice, The Nation, Jacobin, The Progressive. It'll be 2 weeks from today, November 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to see a full list of our events, you can go to the CFE website, which is cfe.ryerson.ca. And I was going to suggest to Luke and Philip, if you'd be willing to share a playlist that you'd recommend. I know there were several people asking for that. Ange read one of the questions. We'd be happy to post that on our website along with the recording of this event, so that if anyone wants to go to that, they'd have access to it. So if you're willing to consider that, we'd be very grateful. But mostly, I just want to thank you both so much for a wonderful, engaging, thoughtful, and challenging conversation. It is really important, and we're grateful you're willing to do that. Thank you very much.